Okay, so we are ready. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another scientific moment. This is a space for talks, for technical talks that we are open. We are opening to receive new talks. So everybody who wants to give a talk, you can contact us through the Open Slack channel or through the Research and Innovation Forum. These talks are pointed to be technicals about the topics, technical topics related to blockchain or to technology that are related with our work. Okay, so our invited today is Sergio Lerner. He's the chief scientist of RSK, and he's going to talk about a new consensus algorithm to improve the speed of mining of blocks. So welcome, Sergio.
Hello, hi, Julian. Thanks for the invitation. Um, yep, I'm ready to go. I will present, and then at the end, I will give some time for questions. I think that they can forward questions to this chat. Yeah, I suppose you see the screen now. Let me, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this talk is about recent research that is still ongoing about how to improve the consensus algorithm, the consensus protocol of RSK to achieve faster response or faster feedback from the blockchain to make this more similar to centralized applications, okay? So there are several problems that we are trying to solve at the same time. So centralized applications, as I said, have much better user experience than traditional decentralized apps. The main reason is the feedback, the confirmation latency of the actions of the users. We know that a high block rate in proof of work decreases this confirmation latency, but we also know with the new protocols, new consensus protocols that have been developed, that proof of stake can bring a cryptognomic settlement finality in just one block, or in a fewer blocks than proof of work. So in a sense, by signing blocks in proof of stake, you could get a wider endorsement of the whole validator set or miners, so that you can have greater guarantees that your transactions are not going to be reorganized out of the blockchain. Another problem of proof of work is that proof of work, the block time is variable because mining is a stochastic process, where in proof of authority or proof of stake, the block time is completely predictable. So that's another benefit of proof of stake. Also, new protocols and the faster consensus protocols, they have this property that the same validator is able to create multiple blocks. And we know for the experience that switching the miner, switching the validator or the leader, as they are called in PBFT algorithm, in proof of stake algorithm, implies that the information has to travel, the block has to travel across the network, has to be validated by many intermediate hops, and that adds a delay, and that limits the scalability or the block rate. Okay, and the thing that is happening in the blockchain ecosystem is that it's becoming highly competitive in terms of scalability and user experience. We see that the upcoming Ethereum 2.0 Bacon chain has a 12 seconds block. Polkadot has a 6-second block, and Solana has a 400 millisecond block. So it's really fast. So we can argue if this can go against decentralization, and it does, but can we do this in a way that we keep our decentralization, that we have very optimized resources and still be able to reduce the block rate, right? That's the problem we want to solve. So in this particular talk, I will try a different approach, which is trying to give novices like junior engineers, junior researchers, some guides, so as how to approach a problem like this. How can they start from scratch, from literature, and build the protocol. So I'm gonna give some hints of what I do to build the protocol, and that may be useful to you. So rule number one is have a plan. Don't start any research without a plan, time locked. So you know what you will be doing in the future, right? So this was my plan for creating a new protocol for RSK. So first I have to establish the requirements. Then I will take some assumptions that of how the parties involved will behave. And then what I do is explore all possibilities, right? I like the idea of creating this huge tree of all the possible designs that I can imagine, and then start discarding. What I do is discard the dead ends, the protocols that do not match my requirements, or something that I call lost battles. These are when I reach to a point that I have a problem that I don't want to solve, right? That I know is hard. I know that it's a battle I don't want to fight. Then I just trim the branch, and I keep exploring some other protocols, some other branches of the design space. And obviously, during this, I learn from the existing protocols. I read everything I can. There is papers coming every week about consensus algorithms, so there's a lot of information. And then when I have this knowledge, I try to rethink the assumptions. This is a very important step, because with all this knowledge, you may have assumed something that may not be true, or maybe there are some hidden assumptions that you didn't state correctly. Okay, so this is a big important step. And then just start designing and inventing whatever you can. So there you have two choices, right? One choice is to go and try to prove your protocol is secure, which can take you months or sometimes years. It's very difficult, and I don't want to advise you to do this at this point in time. At this point in time, the best you can do is try to break your own protocol, to become your own attacker, and iterate and try to protect your protocol and break it at the same time. And you may need to do this 10 or 20 times until you get something that you believe it's correct, right? Obviously, some other people will come and will break it, but essentially you get much higher assurance or confidence in your protocol without starting to prove anything. So then you have a protocol ready, and then you can go and try to do the math and prove properties of your protocol. So what are the requirements for this idea of a new protocol? So first, this new consensus protocol must still benefit RSK and Bitcoin miners. Okay, so it should not take rewards away from miners, but let the same merge miners participate in whatever new rules or whatever new blocks that I create. Okay, this is a very interesting design restriction, because when you are mining a blockchain, you always know which are the miners that have participated, so you don't have a problem to know which percentage of the validator will participate or not. You just know who they are because they have been mining proof of work blocks, right? Then I want to have a first acknowledging, let's say 5-second stop. Okay, the protocol I created allows much lower than that, but my initial goal was 5 seconds. And then I still want to have this property that RSK has, that I have 2 proof of work confirmations per minute. Actually, I have 4, but 2 in the chain and 2 uncles, right? So I still want to keep having this property that the security also comes from proof of work. I want to have predictable settlement time after the first acknowledge. Okay, I want proof of work miners to still be able to choose and order the transactions. I don't want to create new kind of parties that perform this task at this point. And I want that the security of long reorgs still based on proof of work, but I want that the security of short reorgs, where the proof of work generally have more problems providing that security, the security is based on security bonds, or miners staking some amount of bitcoins that they will lose if they equivocate. And for last one, I want the protocol to be fair. Okay, so the revenue should be proportional to the resources you invest, either in staking or in hash rate. So I have 2 assumptions to start with. So this first assumption that makes RSK different from any other blockchain is that the Bitcoin mining pools will not send work units will not send new block templates to miners at a rate higher than approximately 1 every 30 seconds. And the reason is that Bitcoin miners, the mining pools, they do not want to overload the bandwidth, the network with information to the workers, and because that also may degrade the performance of Bitcoin mining. And currently, Bitcoin mining is the main source of income for RSK miners. So we don't want to, interfere with that source of income in any potential inconvenient way. So the second assumption is that the RSK network will not generate state-dependent proof of work blocks faster than 30 seconds because of the first assumption. So essentially, if we create 2 blocks and we try to reduce the interval between the 2 blocks, then I cannot make the second depend solely on the state of the state that was left from the previous one. So if we take a look at what is the current, how the current RSK blockchain looks like, it looks like this diagram in the left, where we have the best chain and we have a lot of uncles, which is part of the design of the RSK to have a lot of uncles, and we have a lot of uncles. But if we try to increase the block rate, we will get something like the thing that we have in the right. So a lot of uncles, like 5 times more uncles, but it's still the same block rate, still the same number of blocks participating in the best chain. Okay, so that's why just increasing the rate of proof of work blocks does not work. So now I start putting my own restrictions, right? Things that I think that the design should go to, and I'm just pruning a lot of things here. So we increase the block rate, but we won't increase the proof of work block rate at the beginning, as I said before, and we'll use something called microblocks, which are basically proof of authority blocks. So blocks that are only signed by an authority, and the authorities will be the miners themselves. Okay, the term microblocks comes from the Bitcoin NG paper. Then we want to target 5-second microblocks, 1 every 5 seconds in a deterministic way. And we want the Bitcoin miners, as I said, not only to create proof of work blocks, but also microblocks. The microblocks should be bonded, so miners put some coins, some Bitcoins at stake, and they will be penalized if they equivocate. Okay, if they present 2 microblocks, 2 blocks, whatever, that are conflicting, then they will be penalized by presenting this evidence to a smart contract on RSK. And we want to have this cryptoeconomics finality in a low number of confirmations. Like the best would be just 1 block. We should be able to maximize the coins at stake. The sooner, the better to punish fast. So if in a few blocks I get all the stake in the pool, all the stake provided by the miners being at stake, okay, at risk of being lost on equivocation, that's the best I can get, right? Because then I'm sure that if I'm performing low value transaction, then I'm protected by this loss of revenue or loss of coins if they misbehave, if the miners misbehave. And then one of the new ideas is that this creation of microblocks should be optional. We shouldn't force any Bitcoin miners to stake anything, to put coins at stake. Just if they want to, they should work. So this restriction says that basically, if the protocol degenerates, like if no one is creating microblocks, then it should go as normal as a proof of work blockchain. Okay, so we could transit in a smooth way between the current proof of work protocol and the new protocol. And last, if some miners do not want to participate in this new consensus protocol, they don't want to create microblocks, they can still create proof of work blocks and compete almost fairly. So there's some revenue they will not be able to grab, but they will still be able to have the most of the revenue. So basically what I've said that I will be creating some hybrid of proof of stake and proof of work, right? And from my many years of experience and having really read maybe 50 or 1,000 of different consensus protocol ideas, then I know that proof of work is just a very simple mechanism. Even if it's simple, there are some rare incentives that it brings, like selfish mining or the block withdrawal attack and against mining pool. So even if you have some simple protocol, you can have some strange incentives being created. What happened with proof of stake is that you have many more components that must interact, and you are probably will have a lot of uncontrolled incentives that you have. It's much difficult to design. So I've always prefer proof of work. But in this particular case, I have no other choice than to go deep inside proof of stake. So as I said, my second principle is choose the battles wisely. So the battles I want to fight. There are some battles I know I don't want to fight for many reasons. It can be the experience. It can be anything. I can be that you've seen many attempts and it didn't work. So in the case of my protocol, there's one battle I don't want to fight, which is having two two leaders competing for the same slot. Or in other words, if I have two the leader is the validator of the miner entitled to create a block for a certain time, right? Certain slot of time. So I don't want to have two leaders competing for the same slot. I don't want to have two leaders one after the other, where the second leader can skip the block of the micro block of the previous leader. Because I know that since creating microblocks is very cheap, because you just have to sign something, then this is going to give, I will have to tune the incentives, and this will be cryptoeconomic incentives, and it will never be enough to prevent these kind of attacks. So this is the battle I don't want to fight, and my protocol will be designed just to avoid this battle. And the final rule is explore all potential solutions with this, and try to find the best one. And this is kind of brute force approach, but this is what I do. So first decision, I have two possibilities to increase the block rate. Either I keep the idea of sequential processing of blocks, or I take this new idea, or it's not new, but I take this idea of doing sharding, which is creating more blocks, but each block does not depend on the previous block state. So since it does not depend, then proof of work could still work. The RSK proof of work could still work. Well, in this particular case, I choose sequential processing. I don't want to go into the complexities of sharding, because sharding has many, it's good for application-specific shards, but if you really want to have a composability and a single address pane, you break it. The next design decision is whether you want to shuffle the leaders, to shuffle the block producers, a different leader for each microblock slot, or you want to have a single leader that produces many blocks. And there are good reasons to, at least for a short period of time, have a single leader producing blocks. Because if you're constantly exchanging this leader, then you have to take into account the propagation time of the block, which implies not only the link delays, but also the verification of the block in each intermediate hop. So you are probably not going to be go lower than 5 seconds. While if you create a stream of blocks from the same source to all the destination, to all the other miners, then you are not bound by these restrictions. You can actually create, as Solana does, one block every 400 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds, because you don't have to wait anything. You just have to create new state, stream a new block, and so on. Of course, you don't want to keep the same leader for a long time, because then you lose the censorship resistance property, right? If all the blocks are created by the same leader, then this leader has the opportunity to block some transactions. But essentially, most blockchains protocols, smart contracts, they never rely on censorship resistance on short periods. They generally rely on a week of blocks or a day of blocks. So it really does not bother to stream some amount of blocks from a single source. It doesn't hurt any smart contract generally. Okay, so here I pick having a single leader. And now I have three choices. So, and this is interesting because initially I didn't have a prefer. I mean, I have one prefer, but I didn't know if I could get a good protocol for it. So I want to have the fastest finality, transaction finality possible. So the current state is that you create a block, and then another block comes, possibly created by another miner, and that second block is endorsing the first block. So as more blocks are added to a blockchain, you get a higher percentage of endorsement of the miners. So after some time, you get more than 51% of the miners endorsing the block. So if those miners would be staking those endorsements, then they could be slashed if they misbehave. But this works well in Bitcoin because there are huge mining pools. So essentially, very fast you get this high percentage of endorsement. But it doesn't need to be always like that, because if you had a very, very decentralized mining network, then it would take a long to get to 51% if each block just endorses by, I don't know, 0.1%. So the next thing you can do, which is a little bit better in terms of settlement finality, let's say that a certain percentage of the miners or the validators in the case of proof of stake is endorsing every single block by creating a signed message that say, okay, I vote for this block, I approve this block. So after a number of blocks, let's say if 7% of the miners endorse each microblock and these sets do not overlap, then after 10 blocks you have more than 66% of the endorsement, which means that if you have a reorganization or a misbehavior, then at least 1/3 of the stake will be slashed, which may be a lot of money. So good. And the best you can have is that every single block you have an endorsement of more than 66% of the miners, and this is great. Well, the good thing is that in the case of Bitcoin, you can get 66% of the endorsement by maybe 8 or something signed messages. So this is completely feasible in the case of RSK. Okay. Generally, what you need, if you expect to have thousands of endorsement, you need to use a signature scheme that allows to do signature aggregation like BLS. But in our case, it may not even be needed. Okay, so these are the decisions that I took, and now I have complete set of protocols that I can create with these restrictions or these first choices. And I assign a name to each one of these protocols. It's just a word that I've chosen, but essentially you can have many proof of authority blocks, many micro blocks between proof of work blocks. Then you can have the opposite, like many proof of work blocks and some every now and then a proof of stake block or a proof of authority block. Or you could have something differently, which is a proof of stake blockchain, essentially, with no proof of work, but with some proof of work like attached, like overlap, as uncle blocks work, right? Or you can have the opposite, like essentially a proof of work blockchain with some proof of stake attached, like uncles. So here in these two diagrams, I show what do I mean by overlapped, which is like something that is referenced but is not part of the chain, where in between is where the block lies in the chain. And then we can have something like in the middle, which I call equal proof of authority and proof of work blocks, which is let's mix one on one. Okay, so I think that I've covered most possibilities center in a blockchain, right? If there is no blockchain, then it might be more possibilities. So in this talk, I'm just going to explain the path I took, which is many proof of authority blocks between proof of work blocks. I explore all of them, but I wouldn't have time to talk about each one of them. Okay, so let's start. So the basic idea is this. I have these red rectangles, which are proof of work blocks that I call key blocks. This is a terminology come from Bitcoin NG. And I have the proof of authority block, the signed blocks, which I call microblocks. So what I will do, which is something that Bitcoin NG does, is that the proof of work blocks will switch the leader So there will be between proof of work blocks, there will be a single leader, and every time a proof of work blocks comes, then the leader will be switched. So this is good because proof of work has the possibility to bring some entropy, some random numbers, which is always needed in proof of stake Bacon chains to select the set of validators from a bigger set. So proof of work give us this possibility to have a simplified Bacon chain where I can choose the leader every time a new proof of work block is mined. Okay. So the problem here is I call this problem the two rulers dilemma. So let's say we have some leader that is creating microblocks. So now a proof of work block is mine. A key block is mine. So what is the incentive for the microblock leader to switch to reference to add this proof of work? He can keep mining proof of microblocks. So there's no incentive. So the first idea is let's delay the payment of the proof of the microblocks, the fees of the microblocks, until proof of work block comes. Okay, so if he delays the proof of work, he's delaying his payment. The problem is that this does not work because the leader can just keep being in rule just to perform an attack on the platform or to censor transactions. So just paying for including a proof of work block does not work. So the obvious idea is let's put a different weight on proof of on microblocks than on proof of work blocks, right? This is kind of event, right? So let's say that if microblock contributes 0.01 to the weight of the cumulative work, right? The thing that is used to select the best chain. And let's say that the key blocks, they contribute to 1 unit, okay? So now, every time key block is mined, all the nodes will switch to this fork that has the key block. So it seems we have solved these two rulers dilemma. But from my experience and from an RSK IP I worked that is the external hash rate, I found that when you have a blockchain with blocks with different weights, then there's always a selfish mining attack that you can perform. So in this case, let's say that the Mallory, which is the bad guy or the bad girl in this case, Mallory creates this key block, this proof of work block M, but instead of broadcasting it to the whole network, it keeps it private, and it just waits for this honest chain that has only microblocks to extend to a certain point to include, a certain transaction that then he can double spend just by publishing this proof of work block, because the proof of work fork weights more than the honest fork, which only contains microblocks. So we have given a tool to a miner to reverse the blockchain, many blocks of the blockchain just instantaneously, which is very bad. So there's something wrong here, okay? So now there's another problem, and this is restricted only to RSK. That is, I call this the lazy parent, and I talked about this before, is that RSK miners will not be able to reference the last microblock if the last microblock happened only 5 seconds before. They will need to reference as parent a block that is probably 15 seconds up to 30 seconds before. And while they do this, every time they publish a proof of work block, they will be orphaning microblocks by accident, not because they want to, but just by accident. So I'm here assuming 5 seconds microblock and 30 seconds proof of work blocks. So as you can see how the number of blocks that are orphaned by this setting. So this cannot work for RSK unless the miners decide to update their block templates much faster. So something must be invented here. The existing method does not seem to work here. The other problem is that if we, instead of doing some variable number of microblocks, we say, okay, every leader will create, let's say, 3 microblocks, and then we will wait until the next proof of work block comes, then we have the same problem that the next proof of work block, the key block, if either will be an uncle or will come 30 seconds later. So we will have gaps of 30 seconds between the microblocks, which reduces or degrades the user experience. So you can be lucky and have a confirmation in 5 seconds, but sometimes every n blocks, every k block, sorry, you will have to wait 30 seconds, which is not cool. Okay, so what I did at this stage of research is, instead of keep trying my own ideas, I say, okay, let's see what else exists in the ecosystem. So I found all these hybrid solutions between proof of work and proof of stake. There might be others, but these ones are the ones I could find. So we have the oldest one is Peercoin from 2012. Then we have this Twohub blockchain, Twins coin, proof of activity, Bitcoin NG, and there's some other protocols out there that not very well formalized. I don't want to dig into them. So let's see if any of these apply to our problem. So first one, Peercoin. Peercoin allows you to mix any number of proof of work blocks and proof of stake blocks. So essentially in any distribution. And proof of stake blocks are created consuming something called coinage, which is, if you have many UTXOs, every single UTXO has the last time you have moved those coins, or the time you have created. And as time passes, you get more of this coinage, which is the time certain amount of coins have been locked without movement. So as time passes, miners or proof of stake miners get higher and higher coinage. And when they find enough coinage, they can create a proof of stake block. So there's three problems with this consensus protocol. First, we have not solved the lazy parent problem that RSK has. Second, RSK has no concept of coinage, so accounts are change balances. There is no single UTXO that you consume, although you could, emulate that somehow using multiple addresses or something. There's no native thing as coinage. And there is a certain problem that is specific to this Peercoin protocol, which is the hidden coinage. Like, it's very easy for a proof of stake miner to hide coinage, like stop producing blocks and suddenly use all the accumulated coinage to produce many, many blocks in a row and revert the blockchain. So, yeah, it's not a very good consensus protocol. The next one is this one called Twohub blockchain. Essentially, it pairs every proof of work block with a proof of stake block in pairs, and every new proof of work block refers to both of them. And this is not good in our case, because this would only increase the transaction capacity would double it, but we need much more than double, and it still does not solve the lazy parent problem. Then we have this Twins coin that is very similar to the previous protocol, but it allows you to have uncles so that you can accumulate more proof of work. But as I said, in our case, uncles will not generate a higher stream of blocks in the main chain. We have this protocol proof of activity that is essentially the miners create the headers, proof of work headers. Then some set of users are randomly chosen based on the hash of this header that contains proof of work, and every one of these randomly selected users have to endorse the block. And when the last user endorses the block, it seals it, it provides a transaction and creates the final block where the next miner can reference. And okay, so it has some interesting things. It introduces this endorsement that are shown here in orange, like orange blocks. These are the endorsement of different users, but it does not increase the block rate in our case. So it just adds endorsement, like it adds some kind of settlement finality, but it does not increase the block rate, because it's still, blocks are still proof of work. So this does not work. And then we have Bitcoin NG, which seems at first to be a candidate. Basically, Bitcoin NG creates key blocks, which are the proof of work blocks. And in the middle, the miner who creates a key block is the miner who continues mining microblocks for as long as he can until the next key block comes. And there is a incentive structure where the higher part of the fees are postponed to the next leader, so that the next leader has a higher incentive to extend the microblocks instead of just picking one and reverting the blockchain. So there is a small cryptoeconomic incentive to do that. This is something that RSK already has. In RSK, 90% of the fees of a block are given to the remaining miners, the miners in the future. So this is not new, but there is a huge problem with this protocol, is that essentially the new key miner can revert. I mean, if he's willing to lose some fees or from some microblocks, which generally, if you are willing to double spend, then you don't care about those small fees. Then you basically can pick any previous microblock and keep extending that. And in Bitcoin NG, the only blocks that carry weight for the best chain are key blocks. So essentially, it has this selfish problem that when you fork, then everyone would follow you. So you can reorganize the blockchain. So for us, this protocol is no use. Okay, so this was a moment after I did this that I said, okay, this is a good time to review my assumptions. Maybe there is something that I missed or originally. So actually there was something that I missed, or an implicit assumption. So the first assumption was correct, but the second assumption was that blocks could not be created that depended on a previous block state. But this is only true if you try to create transaction for all the users. But if you are creating transaction for yourself, right, not for a third party, then you might be able to re-anchor or select a new parent for that block, because you know that if you change the parent, the state for your accounts will be the same. Okay, so if you are only introducing your own transactions in a proof of work block, or no transactions at all, then basically that block can be endorsed to a different part of the blockchain after it has been created. So basically, you set a first parent, you then create a proof of work, you try to find the proof of work, you find it, and then you can reassign the parent to a new position. That is the idea. So this without this restriction, then we have this idea I've commented, that now every time a key block is created, we can have a little piece of data appended to a block when it is created, which I call the key endorsement, which reassigns the parent. So I don't know if the gray lines can be seen, but first they were pointing to a node block, but when you do the endorsement, you point to a new parent, and that is the latest microblocks that you have seen. Okay, so what this allows us is to increase the proof of work rate, because we don't have any of these dependencies of a previous block state. Okay, so this is how the new blockchain looks like. It has the key blocks, but the key blocks are re-endorsed to choose a new parent, and the parent will be the last microblock that has been created. Now, it seems that we have not get rid of the problem of what if the miner, instead of choosing the last microblock, it chooses a very old microblock. So maybe you have this we've solved the problem for honest miners, but for the honest miner we have changed nothing. So now is that okay? So this is this was what happens. Okay, I'm going to skip this because we don't have so much time. Okay, so yeah, I may go to this later. Okay, so let's continue with this. So there are two things that we have to solve. I'm sorry for the. I thought that another slide was coming. So, but this one is here. So let's explain it. Okay, so there are two problems that we need to solve, even if we do this. So the first is the bootstrapping phase that I talked about. And what we will do is that if the old parent is equal to the new parent, then the proof of work block can carry transactions. So you basically can create a standard proof of work block just by setting these two parameters equal. And To prevent staking censorship, to prevent miners from staking to produce microblocks or cease to produce microblocks, we will allow these key blocks certain amount of gas so that they can include their own transactions to stake or unstake without any risk of being censored by the leaders of the microblock mining. And this, I think that the similar idea comes from Stacks blockchain, which also have a specific mechanism to stake and unstake without with avoiding censorship of the remaining miners. Okay, so as I said, now every key block will choose a new leader, and this leader will be chosen based on the proof of work of the previous of the key block. But instead of doing what Bitcoin MG does, I'm going to choose a random miner, and there are very good reasons not to be the same leader. I mean, if you create a key block to continue being the leader, there are a lot of incentives that appear. So I want to choose a random miner to be the next leader. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the 100 last blocks that have been mined, the last 100 proof of work blocks that have been mined, and I'm going to choose one at random, and that will be the next leader for the next epoch. So each one of these from Keyblock, it's called an epoch. Okay, so that's how it will work. So so how is that this staking and slashing works? So the idea is that a microblock leader creates some blocks, let's say A1, A2, and 3. And then let's say he decides to reorg the blockchain to perform some kind of double spend attack and creates A4, A5, A6, which do not follow A3, but just are competing with their own blocks. So basically, this new branch will orphan A2 and A3. So how are we going to protect from this cryptoeconomically? Okay, so if you take A2 and A4, and together these two blocks will be evidence of equivocation, right? And if you submit that to the blockchain in any block to a smart contract, then you will have this miner A stake burnt. Okay, so it's very easy, and the block format can be made very, very efficient so that proving equivocation is it's a very, very small message. You don't have to bring the whole block. You just can bring even less than a block header to prove equivocation. Okay. So, and how do we protect? There's one thing that I left behind when I was talking was what happens with selfish mining. Wouldn't have the same selfish mining problem if the miner that creates a key block decides to pick a parent in the microblocks that is not the last block in the chain. So the case is this: we have this best chain created by Alice. Then Mallory creates a key block, a proof of work block, which is this one K2 in red. And before creating K2, he puts in the best chain a transaction T1. But now he can, in his own fork, if he happens to be the leader, I mean, or he's in collusion with the leader, next leader, he puts another transaction T2, which is double spend of T1. Okay, and he keeps this privately. If we value this, the weight of this chain, the weight of this chain is 1.03 because you have 3 microblocks and 1 key block, while the best chain, the honest chain, has only 0.04. So essentially, when the miner Mallory published this, he will overturn the best chain. So he succeeded in performing this double spend. Okay, so this is the last problem we have to solve. And how can we solve this? Well, as I said before, having endorsements allow us to create blocks at high speed, proof of work blocks at high speed, and we don't have to worry about where if they will belong, they will be in the main chain, because they can be uncles. So the idea is that we reduce now the block rate back to 5 seconds, which is what we wanted in the first place, and we create these yellow rectangles, which are uncle blocks, uncle proof of work blocks, but we will call them endorsements because they point to a specific block in the main chain. And the new rule is that you need 5 uncles before you can create a key block. Okay, so this endorsement, this proof of work blocks will be uncles until you collect more than 5, or you collect 5. Once you collect 5, you just can create a key block. So what is the benefit of this? We can have a very fine-grained proof of work. That's why the protocol is called micro proof of work, Micropow, so that almost every single block, proof of stake block, every single micro block can reference a proof of work block that is endorsed for exactly the previous micro block. So essentially, we have now paired micro blocks with proof of work blocks almost in a one-to-one way, so that the selfish mining is no longer profitable, because now, if we go back to, if you see what happens with Mallory in the same attack as I showed before, now the best chain will have all these endorsements, E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, happening because miners are mining micro proof of work for that chain, while Mallory's hidden fork does not have any of these and cannot even refer to those endorsements, because they are endorsing another chain. So the Mallory gets to a dead end. He cannot overpass the main chain because the main chain has a much higher weight. Okay, good. So we must also penalize multiple endorsements. So endorsement equivocation is also penalized with the same mechanism. So if I have a proof of work block and I try to endorse it to different branches, then I will be penalized. And if I create 2 key blocks and I try to endorse them to different branches, I will be penalized. Okay, so all kind of equivocation is penalized in the same way, with the same block format, the same structures. They are all the same for us. Okay, so there's some interesting possibilities, what I call multiple equivocation, which is, let's say a miner is willing to equivocate. He's willing to lose all the stake to cause some harm. So instead of creating 2 branches, he can create 1,000 of branches, millions of branches, because creating, in particular, creating microblocks is free. This is not a very severe problem because you can just program the node to keep only 2 of these branches and reject all of the rest. If you have two forks with the same cumulative work, with the same weight, then you don't need to switch between them every time. So basically you can keep 2 of them and just throw away the rest. So this is not a big problem if you program the node carefully. Another problem is, what if the leaders decide to censor these proof of work endorsements? Well, that's not a problem because the key block itself can refer to any number of endorsements, like uncles, in the same way. So if you want to censor endorsement, the next time the key block comes, it will just pick all the endorsements that were created before, and you will have a blockchain with a lot more weight. So no problem here. Okay, so now we have finished almost our protocol. We have most of the properties we wanted. I would say this would be like Micropow 0.1, but I want to get to 1.0, which is 1 block transaction finality, 1 block finality, or settlements finality. And how to do this? Well, since we have this miner hash rate ranking by looking at the last 100 blocks, we can ask some percentage of these miners to endorse microblocks. Okay, let's say we ask 66% of them to sign endorsements of every single microblock. So first, this is very cheap because you can reach 66% of the miners with let's say 10 endorsements. So for our case, it's super cheap, and even in that case, I solve this problem in a way that it does not require to include the endorsements in the block. So the endorsements are just propagated as evidence on over the network, and there is an incentivization mechanism for miners to propagate their endorsements. Okay, so basically, adding this type of single block endorsement, I get transaction finality in one block, which is what I originally wanted. So yeah, I think that's all. I just want to show you the full picture of the protocol. We have, again, the, sorry, this is telling me I'm almost finishing. So we have the yellow rectangles are the proof of work endorsement, these anchor blocks. We have the orange squares, which are endorsements. That are very small messages that just sign a certain block at a certain height. We have the red blocks that are key blocks, proof of work blocks. And we have these ROMs, green ROMs that just show where the change, the leader change happens. And now, looking that in retrospective, I can pinpoint every decision, every choice, where it came from. Like, let's say, rewarding intermediate miners for the work. Where this came from? Well, it came from mining pools and the Nakamura protocol. They do this. Where does this idea of referencing uncles come? Well, it comes from Ghost. The Ghost protocol does that. Where's this idea of single source microblocks comes with? It comes from Bitcoin NG. And where's this idea of endorsement, full block, and the whole set of endorsements? Where does this come from? It comes from Solana, or comes from Ethereum 2.0, from Algorand. And where this come from, this idea of pseudo-random choosing of the leader? Well, it comes from most of the proof of stake blocks that require a beacon chain. I found only two things that were novel. Maybe you find a paper that mentions these ones, but I could not. That is, one is this idea of reassigning a parent without causing any kind of harm. And the other idea is that these yellow blocks will be forced uncles, so that you will count the number of uncles until you are able to create a key block. So I think those two little things are novel. The remaining things kind of is a mixture of existing things, but it's I think it's a very original mixer because I could not find fatal flaws. I just find it very very compelling. So yeah. Oh, there's something more. This is everything I left out of this talk, just for you to know that there are many details that I have not mentioned. First, how this probabilistic incentive mechanism works for this proof of authority endorsement. If the proof of authority endorsement will not be included in the block, then how I'm going to incentivize them. Okay, one thing. The other thing that is I'm not telling you is how is the reward sharing working between microblocks, key blocks, proof of work endorsements, and proof of authority endorsement. There must be a function that distribute rewards in a way that all of them are incentivized to follow the protocol. The other is how miners will stake and unstake. And I've talked a little bit about the censorship resistant property of staking and unstaking. Other technical topics that I have not mentioned is how is this new block and endorsement format. How is this dynamic ranking of miner hash rate computed? It could be computed at every block. It could be computed at certain intervals, several ways. And another thing that I didn't mention is how, if I'm going to have 5 times more proof of work, and the blocks will be much bigger because proof of work takes space. In particular, merge mining proof of work takes space. How I'm going to prevent this to blow the blockchain? And the answer is by creating flight client proofs for long periods of time. Like I can take a month of block or 6 months of blocks and then compress all the proof of work with a single flight client proof and throw away all the proof of work. And the flight client proof proves exactly the same as the with certain probability as the proof of work. Okay. And finally, there's some topic of future research that I still have to research. Is what would be the minimum security bond that will be enough for users to transact, And should it be variable? Like I can stake more or stake less, or should be fixed? And in case of it if variable, what this allows me, maybe if I put more stake, I'm able to create more microblocks without endorsement. That could be a choice. Or maybe if I put more stake, I'm more probable to be chosen as leader. That could be another choice. So I have to figure out which one of these is best. Yeah, and I think these are the open questions I have to still work on. Okay, so just in time, it's fantastic. It's never happened to me. So yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask now. Julian, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Well, amazing talk, Sergio. Let's go with the questions. We have a question here from Prem Lee Barbosa that he said, I didn't catch why it matters to have 51% of miners mine blocks that include a particular validation.
I got the communication interrupted. Could you pause the question or repeat it?
Yeah, I can post it here.
Okay, I didn't catch why it matters to have 51% of the miners mine blocks that include a particular validation. Well, I think that's what Prem is asking, if why I want every single block to have the endorsement of more than 51% of the miners, and particularly I want more than 51%. The thing is that if I don't require this, then I only get higher and higher confirmation security as long as I receive more and more confirmation blocks. But it's a very nice property to have instantaneously settlement finality, and I want to have that property. So if I get let's say 70% of the miners to endorse a block, then I know that if they want to endorse a different block, then at least I need more than 51. So at least 20. I need at least 20% of them to equivocate, right? I say it correctly, so that I can slash that amount of coins.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Prem, for your question.
Is there any other question?
Okay, thanks, Raul, for your comments.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Julian, for putting this all together.
Okay, and thank you, Sergio, and see you on the next scientific moment.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.